It's COP30. That means yet another climate conference and yet another series of photo ops for the big EU leaders. For 30 years, we've heard calls for less carbon, less emissions, less industry.
They start to talk about catastrophe, and then they say it's because climate change. But if you go at the end of the process, it's really stop growth. This is what the vision of the Greens are.
The only result has been the impoverishment of Western countries, while fossil fuels remain stubbornly necessary across the world.
So all those things are really misleading. You see a windmill, you say, oh, it's fantastic, I don't need fossil fuel. No, without fossil fuel, there is no windmill.
Yeah. Will this COP be any different? And can we find a way to break the stranglehold of climatist ideology on European politics? To find out and to hear more about why environmental ideology just isn't working, I sat down with Samuel Furfari. Samuel is an engineer with a PhD in applied sciences and worked for 36 years at the Energy Directorate of the European Commission. He's the author of a vital new book, The Truth About COPs, 30 Years of Illusions. So Samuel, thanks so much for joining us. As we're recording this, there's the COP going on and people are beginning to ask the question, is asked by your book, that what illusions is COP actually perpetuating, and is it time to think of a different approach?
I thought that it was appropriate after 30 years to have a look to the result of the COP. You know, it's like Christmas. It's coming every year, and a lot of people doesn't know what it is Christmas, but they celebrate Christmas. And the same thing with the COP. They don't know what it is COP, but they talk about the COP. So it's important to remind what it is. It's something which have been decided by the Convention of Climate Change, the United Nations Convention of Climate Change of 1992, where there is an obligation to meet every year to see the progress. And so the COP tried to evaluate the progress over the years, and if possible to impose more of the vision of the Greens to the 198 countries. So I was in charge of this before the COP1, so I've accumulated over the 30 years a lot of information, anecdote also, and I decided that it is important to share that with the citizens who want to learn about the reality of the COPs.
Yeah, and so in your opinion, has this international gathering of politicians, leaders, activists, it seems to have become more of a ritual than a actually kind of substantive event? It's like something that people do and say, and a new target is announced, but the reality is that nothing necessarily is changing.
Yes, the COP3 in Kyoto was giving a dream to the Greens, saying, no, we have a target. But after the end of the Kyoto Protocol, nobody evaluated if there was real progress or not, and there was no progress. And then arrived the COP21 in Paris, where people say, well, this time we are going really to change everything. There are so many engagement of the countries that this time the target will be implemented. Well, since the Paris Agreement, the emissions have increased by 8% because it was the COVID. Mm-hmm. You know, the COVID have blocked everything, so no movement, no industry, therefore no progress on energy consumption and reduction of CO2 emissions. Otherwise, after the Paris Agreement, we would have had maybe 12-15% of increase. Anyway, what is important is that since COP1 until now, CO2 emissions have increased by 65%. Mm-hmm. You imagine a CEO which says, I want to do that, and he's doing not bad, but very bad. So it's very strange that nobody say, okay, we should reflect what is going on, because to increase by 65% when you pretend that you will reduce, something have to be wrong completely in this process.
And in your opinion, what has been going wrong? So most climate activists say that, oh, if only we just had stronger targets, we had better international agreements, we were all used less, consumed less, then we'd be fine. What do you think has gone wrong?
In my book, I do not talk about the climate science. It's not my topic to discuss about climate science. What I want to show is that it's impossible to reduce the CO2 emissions because of physics. You can meet with Obama and all the other. This does not change the physics. The physics is very simple. The notion of work is the same notion of energy. You cannot work without energy, and if you have energy, you can work. It's the same notion in physics. And the same unit. The unit of work is joule, the unit of energy is joule. So if you want to reduce the energy consumption of the planet, you need to reduce the work. And if you reduce the work, you increase you decrease the prosperity. Mm-hmm. And this is the problem, that people have not realized or do not want to look at the social consequence of the COP, because it's easy to meet and agree, we will do, but then practically what are you going to do? To create unemployment because you do not use energy? Of course, there is also another part saying that, well, we do not want to reduce the energy consumption, but we want to impose renewable energy. Okay, if you want, but renewable energy concept emerged in 1973 with the oil shock. It is not because of climate change that we have dreamed to produce renewable energy. It started since 52 years ago. The world is working on renewable energy since 52 years. And we have to admit that after such a long period, wind and solar in the world represent 3%. In Europe, it's 5%. But it's nothing compared to the need of energy. So on one side, you cannot reduce the work of the people in the planet, because otherwise you will increase poverty. And on the other side, you cannot avoid fossil fuel because renewables are not a solution.
Yeah, let's come back to renewables again in a second. But the first half of your equation, if you like, it seems to me, and we've, MCC Brussels have published some reports on this, but that actually, if you look at the detail of lots of climate policies, they do seem to be designed to reduce consumption in various ways, reduce what you call work. So energy policy is all about reducing consumption, whether that's having more eco-friendly lights or just heating your homes less or whatever. So that hasn't entirely been very successful, but it's clear that it's made people maybe less well off than they might have been otherwise. Or you agree that, or do you see that it's clear that there is an attempt to try and reduce that end of the equation?
It is the first chapter of my book, explaining the origin of the COP or the climate change issue. The origin is the Club de Rome, the report of Club de Rome in 1972, which was saying we should stop growth. 30 million of copies of this book have been sold. 30 million. So everybody, including myself, when I was young, have been convinced that we should stop growth. After that arrived Mrs. Brundtland, and on the request of of the United Nations, saying we should work on the implementation of the Club de Rome report, saying that we need to look at the sustainable development. That means reducing the development in a way. Mm-hmm. And the implementation of the Brundtland report has been the Rio Conference of 1992. Where they invented this convention of climate change. So yes, this is a key problem, that everything is starting from the vision of reducing growth. Reducing growth with a good argument, or a bad argument, let's say, saying we cannot continue. We do not have enough resources. I made my PhD on conversion to produce synthetic oil, because we were told that there is no more oil. Mm-hmm. Indeed, oil should have been finished in 2000. We are 2025, and there is much more reserved than there was in 50 years ago. So the people do not understand that the reserve is an economical notion. It's not a geology notion. Mm-hmm. Resources are a geology notion. Reserve depend of the price that you are going to get when you dig it, and the technology that you have at one moment. And because the price is evolving, and because the technology is evolving, reserves are evolving. And we have enough resource, I don't know how long, but for this century and next century, there is no problem. So there is no reason to say that we should stop growth. Because even ethically, this is something that is difficult to admit. We in the OECD countries, we have a good standard of living. But in the rest of the world, it's not the case. And if we want to stop emigration from Africa to Europe, we need to give them prosperity. To give them prosperity means to give them work. That means energy.
Industry, yeah.
Industry and energy. And of course, those people have understood that, yes, I want to grow. I do not want to remain in this situation. And it's why since the COP of Dubai, Africa is changing its vision. And they say, okay, you want to reduce your growth in Europe, do it. We in Africa need to grow. And so we want to use more energy. It's why the COP are at the end of the process, because everybody understand that those people in Africa, but also in Asia, they need to grow. They need to have a good sanitation, good education, good work, good quality of life. You need energy for that.
Yeah, and we know that they've invented many kind of euphemisms, a bit like sustainable development, to dress up what in reality is a demand for no growth. But I also wanted to touch on this kind of, because it seems that from what you're saying, there's an ideological component, not just a kind of scientific component to lots of climate activism and to the COP, that says that not only might we run out of resources for growth, not only might the resources damage the planet, but growth might be bad. It might be bad to be so prosperous.
By itself.
Yeah. And do you see that ideology also kind of underpinning the climate movement?
Yes, this is the end of the logical. They start to talk about catastrophe, and then they say it's because climate change, and then they say because it's CO2 emission and methane emission. But if you go at the end of the process, it's really stop growth. It is what the vision of the Greens are. To limit the attack to the planet, is their word, not mine. They say we should not take nature for our prosperity, and this is of course something that is wrong, because we don't know how much reserved resources we have, and people need to have a good quality of life. Climate change has not changed the intelligence of mankind. We are bright. You imagine we are considering to go on Mars planet, to install there, and we are afraid of 1.5 to 2.5 degree. Come on. That's nothing compared to what we are able to do. But they continue to repeat the same thing because they want to stop growth.
Yeah. And so I said we'd come back to renewables and the topics of renewables. And it seems that for all of the big promises of renewables, that they would be cheaper than conventional energy, that they would employ more people. I was never, as an aside, sure how the fact they would bring more jobs and they would be cheaper would ever make sense together. But it seems like when you look at countries that are successfully kind of developing, like, for example, China, the approach has to be pragmatic. You have to say there'll be some cases where renewables can contribute a lot. Hydroelectric power can be very useful, some amount of solar power, wind in certain places, but you just can't get away from the need for reliable baseload energy production. Is that correct?
When you take China, it's always easy to say that it is the first country in everything. Of course, it's the first country in wind, in solar, but it's the first country on coal. And people do not want to look at that. They massively use coal to run their economy. Not only they dig coal in their territory, but they open mines outside, in Australia, for example. They built a coal terminal in Port Abbott in Queensland, opening a mine, a rail track of 700 kilometers to take the coal from the mine to the Pacific Ocean and then to China. Yes, they need coal, but not only China, but India. India, thanks to the vision of Narendra Modi, they have been able to bring electricity to all citizens in India. This is a big achievement, thanks to coal. So yes, we can say that there is wind and solar in China, but it's peanuts compared to the coal and also to the development of nuclear energy, which is coming. And you are right. It's good to mention hydroelectricity because they are the champion in hydroelectricity. And pay attention because in Europe we have developed hydroelectricity massively in the 50s. Because it's cheap. At that time we didn't talk about the environment, but it is today we can say it's a clean energy and very cheap energy. But the Green do not want that. They refuse any new type hydro project.
Yeah.
Why? Because this is giving prosperity. Each time that there is prosperity somewhere, they do not want it. It's why they do not want nuclear energy.
Yeah.
Nuclear uranium can give infinite energy to the world. But the Green do not want that because it's the key for prosperity.
Yeah, and actually I wanted to talk about nuclear as well, but it's the same with hydro and nuclear, is that this kind of exposes the ideological component of green activism, because both building a big dam for hydropower or building a nuclear power station are kind of symbolic and physical demonstrations of man's intervention in nature.
Yeah.
You can't have hydropower without a massive dam. You can't have nuclear power without the kind of the cutting edge of all kinds of material sciences and nuclear physics and all the rest of it. So there's a kind of reason, an ideological reason why they're opposed to what look like very common sense, reliable sources of energy.
Exactly. All the modern technology use resources, all. And the larger infrastructure use a lot of resources. But you know that wind energy do not exist without fossil fuel. The base of a windmill is a big mass of concrete with steel. You need the mass for the stem to resist the wind. And so the concrete is made with fossil fuel. You smelt limestone. The steel is done in smelting iron ore. So without fossil fuel, you don't have the base for a windmill. And the stem is steel. Again, same story. The wings is glass. Glass is a smelting of sand with coal or gas. And plastic, oil. So everything is depending on fossil fuel. It do not. If you have a solar panel, you cannot produce the windmill, and vice versa. You can have a windmill producing electricity. You will not produce a solar panel because the solar panel needs glass, aluminium, oil, silicium smelt by coal. So all those things are really misleading. You see a windmill, you say, oh, it's fantastic. I don't need fossil fuel. No, without fossil fuel, there is no windmill.
Yeah, and the other component of it is that it brings, these renewables bring a kind of a dependency on other countries like China.
Exactly. We are now so much dependent of China on renewable energy that it's really something that we should be afraid of. Because we were, 50 years ago, when we were thinking that there was no more resource, we were so much dependent on OPEC countries for oil. We have been able, thanks to our brain and strategy and our geopolitics, clever geopolitics, we have been able not to depend too much on OPEC countries. So we are free of this situation of 50 years ago. But we are falling in the pit of depending too much of China. And this is something that we have to react. We cannot depend on China for everything. I learned this morning that no, in Austria there is a Chinese train running because it was cheap and rapid delivery. The Austrian railway company have bought Chinese trains. That's very dangerous for us.
Yeah, and then this is another component of the, I mean, you might say one of the results, if there are any, of the COP process and the general climate change movement has been that Europe's economy is not just more dependent on other countries, but is very depressed. So we see, I mean, partly this has to do with the interference in gas supplies from Russia, but we've seen, especially in recent years, the consequence of making energy more expensive, of putting up regulations to the building of everything, has been that Europe's economies are really struggling.
Yes. I'm convinced that it's important to work on energy efficiency because an engineer is there to improve the quality of product. And if you improve the quality of product, progressively you will reduce its energy consumption. Mm-hmm. So it's a part of the natural business. In a free economy, if you are not efficient, you disappear because your competitor might be more efficient than you. So the energy efficiency depends on the free market. If you are in a free market, not a state government market, then you be efficient. But regarding the buildings, the EU have said we need to inform people about the efficiency of buildings. Fair enough. Why not? You buy a refrigerator, you know what is the consumption. You want to rent a house, you can know the consumption. Why not? But where it is becoming very dangerous is that they oblige the owner of building to refurbish the buildings in order to be able to rent it or to sell it. So you introduce Stalinist obligation to a good belonging to a private entity. So why should we oblige to invest in something which will never be efficient? Because it's clear that if you want to build today a new building, it will be efficient. We have new technologies, fantastic. But why do you want to refurbish the old building where you will not recover? Because to insulate an old building, it needs investment, a lot of investment, not only for the people which have to work, but also to buy the material, to insulate it. Everything is expensive, so you never recover your investment in old buildings.
Yeah, we're seeing in Germany, I think there's lots of examples of people hit with bills into the hundreds of thousands of euros and need to take out another mortgage in order to fulfill their climate obligation.
Correct.
But looking forward, I mean, I think whilst the COP process goes on, I think, as you indicated earlier, it's becoming clearer to people that with America under Trump pursuing a different policy, with China clearly just focusing on securing energy and not worrying so much about emissions, but it's clear that this kind of current climatist consensus, whilst it might be very strong in Europe, it's no longer the dominant kind of narrative across the world. What do you think is going to change in the next few years, or what do you think might change even coming out of this COP?
It starts to change with the COP of Glasgow, COP27, when Mr. Timmermans, Commissioner, and Mr. Boris Boris Johnson from the UK, were trying to ban the use of coal. Mm-hmm. And then China and India say, please, be serious. Then they went to Sharm el-Sheikh, where Egypt is a gas and oil producer. And they say, well, we need to continue to use our oil because it's so important. But in COP28, it was in Dubai. You know that it's a country which is extremely rich and prosperous and want to continue to prosper thanks to oil and gas. And they say in the conclusion, the priority should be the security of supply of energy. Mm-hmm. That was new. Mm-hmm. Because before it was always reduction. And the point 29 of the conclusion of Dubai conclusion is we need to ensure the security of supply because it's a must. So that this has been a big change. And last year in Baku, at the COP29, the president of Azerbaijan, Mr. Ilham Aliyev, opened the conference saying, energy is a gift of God, and we are not going to abandon it. And indeed, I call this COP of 29, I call it the COP of the cuckoo. You know, the cuckoo go in the nest of others. And I have the impression that at COP29, the industry, not oil, all the industry went in the COP to say, okay, no, we are going to lead the COP and not leave that to the green as we have done for 28 years. I think that this is a big change which will be implemented again this year, and we expect no positive result for this COP.
And so is there a future for these type of conferences, or is it time for something different that puts the needs of kind of energy supply and industry and human growth at the center?
We have to educate the population that energy is good and it's not bad as we have been told for the 30 years. Energy is the blood of the economy. Without energy, no prosperity, no quality of life. And it is the energy revolution which have changed the world. We talk about the industrial revolution, but before the industrial revolution, there was the energy revolution with the James Watt machine. And we have to educate young people saying, you know, we are taking care of environment. That's something which is very annoying, that people confuse climate change and environment. Those are two distinct things. You and me, we are breathing CO2, 900 grams a day. And they keep repeating it's a pollution, it's a pollution. No, it's not a pollution. It's the molecule of the life, CO2. But we have to fight for the other pollutant, of course, because this is bad for the health and it do not create prosperity. So we should educate people saying energy is vital. If we have to improve our environment, the air quality, the water quality, that's for sure. But stop dreaming that you are going to stop the planet just because you are limiting your small use. I do not believe that small river make the sea in the field of energy. That's not true. It's not because you are saving a little bit of energy here and there. There are people which stop to send email to save the planet, you know? It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, look, I think as I say, we might be on the cusp of something different. I think that some of the points that you're making are finding a greater kind of purchase, people that are understanding. I urge our viewers to check out your book. We'll put a link to it in the notes for the conversation. But Samuel, we could talk about this for hours, but this has been a really useful, short conversation. I'm sure our viewers will enjoy it too. So thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you to you. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you.